I'm not a professional in the sense that I have always worked on everything based on obsession. Whatever it is I'm working on, if it's interesting to me, first of all, I only try and do things that are interesting to me, and second of all, if it's interesting to me, I don't have any throttle. I mean, I just go after it full bore. For a really long project like Familiaris was, that's that's a conflict because you can't work for 10 years at full bore. Uh, so I end up doing sprints is the way it sort of plays out is I will go just fall in head first into the project for a couple of months at a time, and then I'm completely tapped out. My batteries are completely drained. I have to stop. Then I hopefully I've done a coherent piece of work at that point, and then I move on. In the case of Familiaris, because it has six parts, I could do and they're relatively independent. It's almost like six novellas, so I could work on one, crash, rest, work on the next one, crash, rest, and so on. But and that's okay for me. But I really feel at loose ends when I'm not completely engrossed in making something. The main character, just to really start at the basics, the main character is named John Sawtell. He's Edgar Sawtell's grandfather. So this is basically a story of a different generation of the same family. It has to do with how they came to be in on this farm in northern Wisconsin in this pursuing this odd calling of training a breed of dogs that they basically invented. Um, and it begins in 1919 with John and a couple of friends and his newlywed wife going on an adventure, which they think is going to be a temporary thing. They've sort of lucked into this rundown farm, and John talks his friends into coming along with them. We're going to rehab the farm. He has very idealistic conceptions of how they should live and what they're there for. I mean, his thinking is we're here, we're going to go here for a while and decide what we really want to do with our lives. And so that's part one. That's the thing that kicks the story off and is the motor for everything that happens afterward. Well, even before they moved to northern Wisconsin, there are three, they're already raising dogs, and John's already having a problem letting go of them. He wants to keep all the pups for himself. And he has to sort of have his arm twisted in order to place them with friends and neighbors in where they're living. Um, so there are three dogs. There are actually two dogs. John goes to in the very opening scenes. He goes to up north to place one of the pups with a fellow that he met and comes home with another pup. So instead of winding up with one less pup, they've still got three. One's named Gus and he's easygoing. One's named Needles and he's the troublemaker. And so uh, um, they sort of span the scope of dog behavior from a troublemaker to just an easygoing, get along dog. In the early days of writing Edgar, I picked an actual breed, and it's a large working dog breed. I won't tell you what breed it was because I try not to plant images in people's heads. But one of the things that happened immediately was people said, well, I have these associations with that breed. I have these associations with that breed. I think of this breed being like that as portrayed in the book and so on. And at one point, I thought that was an insurmountable problem, basically, because it came built in. We've all met dogs and we go, that's the way that kind of breed of dog is. So ultimately, one day I thought, well, it's a novel. I can just make up a breed of dogs and say that they've been working at it for generations. And so I just called them Sawtell dogs. And I tried to under-describe them as much as possible to leave room for people to imagine them the way they would imagine them, which was an experiment. As you know, writing a book is an experiment always. Writing a novel is doubly an experiment, I think. So you're waiting to find out what's going to actually work and you're trying things. I take that very seriously. That's part of why it takes me so long to write a book, is I do a lot of narrative experimentation to see which way it works. What I'm trying to portray in this book is the initial idea behind Edgar. One of them was, I mean, are dogs evolving or are they not? And if they are evolving, how, and I'm not just talking about breed, refining a breed. I'm talking about as a species, are they evolving? What would that look like? Because evolution is so incremental that if you with the exception of very special cases where it happens super fast because of some natural catastrophe, um, it happens slowly enough that you wouldn't actually notice it if you were living with it and it was taking place over the course of decades. Um, so the question in my mind is, if dogs are evolving, in what direction are they evolving, or what direction would we want them to evolve? And my answer for that was, well, I'd like them to two things. I'd like them to be better companions, and I'd like them to live longer. And I couldn't really do much about them living longer in this story, but I could imagine like what would a better companion animal be? What would that mean it could do? And so I, instead of answering that in a declarative way, I tried to illustrate that over the course of the books. So putatively, these dogs are better at being companions than any other dog that has come before them, and that's the difference. What they look like and how they're shaped is the thing I wanted the reader to be able to apply from their own imagination.